Hello everyone, welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure, all Bookmap Ltd materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure, trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation and the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @Doug Pless. Here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures, and I think that certainly applies to the large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. And we'll see plenty of examples of that today. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index, SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the ES futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with ES futures. And for the NASDAQ 100, NDX is the underlying index. QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index. And the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading, and the first is planning, and I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding expected trading range and volatility for the day as well as the directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis, and for setups. And when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel as well as the chat in YouTube for your questions or comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. All right, here's my agenda for today, Monday, June 23rd. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, and events for today as well as the rest of the week. Then I'll go through my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups earlier today to get a sense of what traders, options traders, and stock traders, futures traders have been doing earlier today. And then we'll take a look at the live market. And when I get to live market, if anyone has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know and I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's get started with news items. And I'm going to go to the Spotgamma dashboard home screen. And let's take a look at the events calendar for this week. All right, so this morning there was some S&P Global PMI data out. And also that was at 9:45. Existing home sales at 10. And not much of a market mover. So that was today. Tomorrow, a potential market mover, Jerome Powell testimony before Congress. I think this is the semi-annual Jerome Powell, testimony before Congress. One day he goes before the House, the next day the Senate. And that's so Tuesday and Wednesday, 10 a.m., Jerome Powell testimony before Congress. And then big data releases on Thursday and Friday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. GDP, durable goods orders, and jobless claims all come out. So that's on Thursday. And then Friday, the big data release of the week is the PCE data. Again, that's Friday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, so that's the week. Powell testimony, Tuesday and Wednesday. Data releases 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time on both Thursday and Friday. And, of course, the ongoing situation in the Middle East. And also there are a number of Fed speakers throughout the week. Hello, Hector. Welcome. Glad you're here. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to positional analysis. I'm going to start with the S&P 500. This is the ES Futures and Bookmap. All right, Hector had mentioned that ES seems near the upper weekly expected move. That is shown with this light blue line right here. This is the ES upper weekly expected move. So, yeah, ES is definitely heading in that direction. All right, so again, this is the ES Futures and Bookmap. And before I take a closer look at this chart, I want to take a look at take a step back, look at a higher time frame, look at the underlying index. This is the SPX, the underlying index for the S&P 500. And note around the 60-50 level, still acting as resistance. So here was the 512 gap up, 523 test the low, and then back up to around the 60-50 level, acting as resistance. After this big V bottom based on tariff news. All right, so let's now take a look at a little bit shorter time frame. Let's go to a 30-day, 1-hour chart. All right, let's take a look at the key turning points again. So there's that 512 gap up. China tariff news, pause on China tariffs. 23rd, move a little bit lower than that gap level, but then a rally up to right around 60.59. And since then, the S&P 500 has been in somewhat of a range between, let's say, 59.50 and 60.60. Somewhat of a consolidation range. Again, with the 60.50, 60.60 level acting as resistance. And most recently, there was a downtrend. We'll take a closer look at that in just a minute. That began last week, and now SPX has broken out above that level. All right, let's take a look at the levels on this chart. Let's start with expected moves. The dashed purple lines are showing the lower and upper weekly expected move. This is based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. SPX within that range, so that's the lower and upper weekly expected move. And then the dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. And I do post those levels in Discord every day the evening before. So I posted these levels in Discord yesterday afternoon. And it looks like SPX is heading straight up to the upper daily expected move. And I do calculate that independently from the ES upper weekly expected moves. All right, let's take a look at the spot gamma levels on this chart. And that's shown with the dark red lines. I'm going to point out the key daily levels. First of all, the put wall is at 5,900. That's a strike with large net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support. That level did move up from Friday. Next level up is the volatility trigger at 59.75. That is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility, enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, like SPX is trading now, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. And note that is based on Spotgamma's older model, what they call the naive model or the total gamma model. We'll take a closer look at gamma in just a couple of minutes, and we'll see that it is positive for the day. All right, next level up, just above that, is the 6,000 level. That's the absolute gamma strike. That's the strike where largest absolute positive and negative gamma. So that's where most of the gamma-weighted open interest is concentrated. And then finally, the call wall is at 6,100. That's the strike where largest net positive gamma that can be expected to act as resistance. And again, the put wall shifted higher, and the volatility trigger shifted slightly lower, just 10 points lower from Friday. All right, so minor shifts in levels for SPX, and for SPY, there were no shifts in levels. All right, so let's wrap up our view of SPX with a 1-minute chart. And then we'll get back to ES in just a moment. So there's that trend line, kind of a rough trend line that from last week. And SPX broke above that this morning, traded up above the 6,000 absolute gamma strike, eventually found resistance at that level, dropped down on news apparently that Iran had, taken some shots at U.S. military bases in Qatar. And apparently that must not have turned out to be much, because the S&P 500 has rallied sharply since making a lower right around 59.43. All right, so SPX now above the volatility trigger and above the absolute gamma strike, heading for the upper daily expected move, which is just below 60.20. All right, let's take a quick look at SPY, then we'll get back to Bookmap and ES. SPY. Let me zoom out just a little bit. Take a look at levels in play. Round number levels in play. Also some spot gamma levels. Here's the volatility trigger at 595. Zero gamma at 597. And this 599.23 is a combo level. And apparently that level looks like acted as resistance. And most recently, the SPY 592, around that level, acted as support. So SPY levels in play for today. So let's go back to Bookmap now. Go back to ES futures. And by the way, Hector, that was the ES upper daily expected move up above, not the upper weekly expected move, shown in dash blue there. And that's just above the SPY 600 absolute gamma strike call wall. And I did not see that that 599.23 maybe I neglected to put that on my chart here, that SPY combo level. All right, so let's take a look. So I do have a lot of levels here. I have SPX levels and SPY levels, as mentioned before. So here is, for example, the SPX 5950 level, around that level, and there's the 592 level for SPY acting as support. So there is a difference in price between ES and SPX, and today it's right around 52 points. So I'm showing SPX 5950 at ES 6002. And there's the 6000 level that acted as a resistance earlier today, especially in this lower high here. Whoops. This lower high, 6,000 acting resistance, and that is at ES 6052. And I do post those index relationships that I'm using every day in Discord for the S&P 500, NASDAQ, and Russell 2000. All right, so those are the levels in play. ES up to the highs of the day, right around SPY 599. And next target above would be the SPY 600 absolute gamma strike call wall. All right, let's take a look at NASDAQ. Similar chart. We'll take a look at setups in just a few minutes. We're looking at focusing on the levels now. So let's step back. Let's take a look at the underlying index levels for NASDAQ. First of all, here is NDX. Combo level down below. Combo 4 level, 21,562. On the low side, then here's the call wall, volatility trigger 21,625, and then up above the 799 level is another combo level. Let's take a look at QQQ. Zero gamma level, 525, volatility trigger 526, and then the 530 level is the absolute gamma strike. Call wall's up at 540. So this absolute gamma strike did act as resistance earlier today. All right, back to Bookmap now. So there's that 530 level. Back down to this. Let's see, what did I say that level was? Let's go back to QQQ. On the downside, 524. 524 acting as support, and now a sharp rally. We'll take a look at setups in just a couple of minutes. All right, for NASDAQ, for NDX, the volatility trigger, call wall, and absolute gamma strike all shifted lower. That's a bearish hat trick. And then for QQQ, the volatility trigger shifted lower. All right, again, we'll take a look at setups in just a couple of minutes. All right, let's wrap up our positional analysis by taking a look at gamma. And I'm going to go right to trace. This is the trace model showing gamma in real time for SPX. Blue shading indicates positive gamma. And again, remember, in a positive gamma, market makers are trading against price, their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. And then a pocket of positive gamma, a negative gamma up above, shown with the red shading. And then a strong, so right now, pockets of strong positive gamma just above 6,000 here. And then down below 5,900. And this is the 5905 strike. That is the JP Morgan short call. So market makers are long that call at 5905. And a price approaches that level. That expires at the end of the month, 6:30. And as price approaches that level, expiration approaches, the gamma will increase again if price approaches. So right now, earlier today, let's step back a little bit. Take a look at this first reversal right around 6,000 this morning. And you can see SPX finding resistance right around 6,000 as it approached this positive gamma pocket. And again, remember, in positive gamma, market makers are selling strength and buying weakness. All right, let's go back to real time now. All right, let's move on. Let's take a look at some setups. Then we'll get to the live market as quickly as possible. All right, so here's the Hero signal. This is the Spotgamma Hero signal. What this is showing is options trades and market maker hedging activity for the S&P 500 index components. And that is the SPX, SPY, ES futures, and XSP. The purple signal is that's the Hero signal, the purple line, and the white line is price for SPX. So a rising Hero signal indicates traders are taking positive delta options positions. They are buying calls and or selling puts. Market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they have to buy ES futures to hedge their delta exposure. And a falling Hero signal, just the opposite. Traders are buying puts and or selling calls. Market makers, again, take the opposite side, and they have to sell futures to hedge their delta exposure. All right, I'm going to shift into puts and calls. So the orange line is calls, the blue line is puts. I'm going to have to jump to avoid the auto zoom. Let's go back. I'll zoom in on this. So we can take a look at the action this morning. So after a brief dip this morning, about 4 or 5 minutes, traders started buying index calls. They were also selling puts. So the rising orange line again indicates traders are buying calls. Again, market makers take the opposite side of those trades, buy futures to hedge their delta exposure. Rising blue line also indicates they are selling puts, another positive delta position. All right, so that went on for about a half an hour, from 9:34 to somewhere between 10:05 and 10:10. Then traders started buying puts, and the Hero signal made 2 call peak patterns. This is a very reliable bearish reversal signal. And then just after 10:20, they started aggressively selling calls, buying puts, and SPX reversed lower at the 6,000 key gamma strike, setting up a nice short. So bullish opening drive, then a short as SPX moved up toward that 6,000 level and the pocket of positive gamma where market makers were trading against price. And the call buyers and put sellers took the foot off the gas. All right, back to Bookmap. Let's zoom in on this. All right, so here's the reversal higher. Right at VWAP, as traders started taking positive delta positions. The magenta volume dots are showing market buy minus sell. Magenta dots indicate more sellers than buyers. Green volume dots indicate more buyers than sellers. So sellers become exhausted. Aggressive buyers start to come in. Cumulative volume delta shown by the magenta to dark blue line starts rising, and then the yellow line showing buy stop orders helping to fuel that move higher. And interesting, large traders were fading that move with iceberg orders, very typical action. They will sell strength and buy weakness. Again, with iceberg orders, they use to hide their size. And as the call buyers became call sellers, and the put sellers became put buyers, The S&P 500 reversed lower. Note the high liquidity shown in the heat map here, shown by this is the limit of the history of the limit orders in the order book, showing sell orders coming in, and that helping to push the market down. All right, so there's the long setup, the short setup this morning. We'll take a look at the current market in just a minute. Let's take a look at NASDAQ. Then I have some stocks I want to take a look at. Then we'll get back to live market. Similar picture in NASDAQ. So let's go back to Hero. Another signal that we can take a look at for the S&P 500 is the S&P 500 equities, showing options trades, market maker hedging activity for all 500 stocks in the S&P 500 index. And it typically does not show the turning points as quickly as the index signal does. All right, so let's move on to NASDAQ. NASDAQ, very clean signal this morning. This is the index signal for NASDAQ, showing options trades, market maker hedging activity for the index components, again, QQQ and NDX. This is showing that traders were buying calls, selling puts in the morning. They took their foot off the gas, and NASDAQ consolidated, then started to move lower as traders started buying puts. Call buyers came back in right around 12:30, put sellers again, and then NASDAQ reversed higher. And there's another signal we can take a look at for NASDAQ. This is the Mag 7 signal. This is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the stocks known as the Magnificent Seven. We'll take a look at one of those today. That is Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Tesla. Those stocks will make up a very large component of the NASDAQ and can definitely drive price in the NASDAQ. So traders are buying calls in the Mag 7 stocks, took their foot off the gas right around 11:20, and then they have resumed buying calls. All right, back to NASDAQ. NQ Futures and Bookmap. We'll zoom in. There's that reversal in the morning. Aggressive buyers start to come in. Now, in the case of NASDAQ, large traders were moving initially buying. So unlike the ES, large traders are buying that move with iceberg orders. You can also see that buy stop orders were helping to fuel that move higher. And NASDAQ moved up into the, again, remember this is the 530 absolute gamma strike, and just above that the NDX 21,800 large gamma 2 level. We're finally finding a resistance at that level and moving lower. All right, so that's NASDAQ. Let's take a look at a couple of stocks, then we'll get to the live market. All right, not sure why that's not responding. So let's move on. Let's take, there we go. Sorry about that. I've got a lot loaded in. No, it's not. I'm going to have to move on. All right, let's take a look at some stocks. AMD this morning, it's been moving recently. It's been in play, got an upgrade this morning, and it had a brief bullish opening drive and then reverse lower. Let's take a look at AMD. So AMD in the news. Bullish opening drive, key here, support, pull back and support at the 130 key gamma strike. We'll see that in just a minute. Call buyers up and down, finally took their foot off the gas right around 10:10, started selling calls buying puts, and that is bearish momentum. When both the orange line and the blue line move in the same direction, price move lower. Finally found support right around 1235. Then the call buyers and put sellers came back in, and now AMD trying to recover. So let's go back to Bookmap. AMD, there's the pullback to the 130 key gamma strike. Nice pullback entry for a long up to 133. Again, the call buyers took their foot off the gas. Traders start buying puts, selling calls, price moves lower, and then the options traders reverse again. All right, next stock I want to take a look at is Circle. And this stock has definitely been in play for today, play for several days. Sorry about the slow response. I've got a lot open here in Bookmap. All right, so let's take a look at Hero first for Circle. And you can see in the morning, call buyers were coming in, shown by the rising orange line. Few put sellers. And price did move down below the 240 key gamma strike, but reversed higher. Moved up almost to the 300 call wall. And that's when the call buyers took the foot off the gas. Traders started buying puts. We'll take a look at the options chain in just a few minutes in Circle. So almost up to the 300 call wall. So from 240 up to 300. So if you bought a call right near the open and held it and got rid of it, we'll see why you want to do that in just a couple of minutes. Then you had a pretty good day, or just bought stock from the 240 key gamma strike up to the 300 call wall. And by the way, I believe Circle was just added to Amazon. Circle added to Hero on Friday. All right, so back to Bookmap. And I did trade Circle on Friday mid-morning, and I did post my setup in Discord and also on X. It is it moves quite a bit. It's pretty jumpy. Bid-ask spread not too wide for such a recent IPO. We'll take a look at that in just a couple of minutes. And I did find that Circle responds very well to the liquidity in the heat map here, and looked at at this larger zoomed out scale. You can see up here all these sellers. Again, the heat map showing a history of limited orders in the order book, sellers, and Circle finding resistance at that level. So we'll take a closer look at Circle in just a few minutes. All right, next stock. This was also in the news. A couple of items for HIMS. First of all, Novo Nordisk discontinues partnership with HIMS, and also HIMS was being investigated for fraud. And that set up a very nice short. Actually, pre-market, it was already moving down. So you can see this is the cash open right here, 930, and it already dropped pretty sharply, but still nice short after the cash open. So let's zoom back in now. And let's see what options traders were doing. So again, remember, even though the stock trades before the cash open, options for stocks do not start trading until at the cash open 9:30. And this set up a couple of nice divergent shorts, especially right here right around 950. Traders immediately started selling calls at the open, started buying puts a few minutes later, and that's when HIMS really started to drop. So this is a divergent short. Whoops, wrong tool. Divergent short. Short right there. And then bearish momentum after that. So let's go. So remember that was right around 1010. Let's go back to Bookmap. And there's your short right there. Trend break. You can see the magenta volume dots, aggressive sellers come in, and then a sharp drop after that as traders continue to sell calls and start buying puts. And HIMS drop lower, and then another very similar setup right around 1120. Trend break, and price breaks lower for another 4 points lower. All right, that's HIMS. And then the stock of the day, Tesla. Sorry about the slow response. I have a lot loaded in Bookmap. All right, so the stock of the day, also in the news today. And by the way, I did post all of these stocks in my watch list before the cash open. I posted this list at 8:48 a.m. Circle, AMD, Tesla on the bullish side, and then HIMS bearish. So that was a watch list I did post in Discord. And then we're finally looking at Tesla again, the stock of the day. Very bullish today, responding to the rollout of robotaxi over the weekend. That was on Sunday, Austin, Texas. Very limited rollout. I think it was a select group of users, and also there was a safety monitor sitting in the passenger seat of every car that was used as robotaxi. But anyway, Elon Musk indicated it was a successful rollout, and right now Tesla is up. Let me check. Up for the day just over 9%. And let's see what options traders are doing. And go to Tesla here. All right, so this is a bullish opening drive. Call buyers. Let's zoom in on this just a little bit. So you can see the hero signal comes in just a minute or two after the cash open, signaling significant options activity. Get your attention. Call buyers in right at the open again. Also put sellers. They took the foot off the gas right around 10:10, but the call buyers continued. Zoom out. All right, so the call buyers finally took the foot off the gas right around 11:20, and Tesla's consolidating. So back to Bookmap. And look at all the green volume dots up to 355, where Tesla finally found resistance as the call buyers took their foot off the gas. Rising cumulative volume delta. So traders buying calls and buying shares of Tesla. And hello, Anima Central. Welcome. Glad you're here. All right, so there's Tesla, stock of the day. Again, responding to news in my, and again, it was in the watch list that I posted this morning at 8:48. All right, let's take a look at Circle now. Circle recent IPO. It has risen sharply. And let's take a look at a couple things here in Thinkorswim first. So I'm going to go to Circle so we can take a look at a chart. So see, it's a recent IPO. So it has gone up from, let's check, the opening price on June 5th, opening price 69, and has traded up to 300 again earlier today. So let's take a look now at the options market. This is an options chain for today. And just want to point out the high implied volatility. Calls implied volatility. And this is options that expire on Friday. So these are the weekly options. Very high implied volatility for both puts and calls. Puts are both calls and puts very expensive. And I did just as an example, put this trade on earlier today. This is a simulated trade. I certainly did not take that. I would not buy a call at 240 something, 50% implied volatility. But this was an out of the money call. And just for those of you who may not be familiar, this is a profit and loss diagram for a call. So it was out of the money at the time that I put on the simulated trade. And right now it's showing a loss of just right around $1,500. So an out of the money call. What I want to point out is this is theta right here. And what this chart is showing is how much this position is losing every day due to time decay. So just be careful out there. And if you're, if you buy, like I said, if you bought a call at the open right around 240 and as Circle rallied up to 300, you had a good day. But I would certainly not consider holding one of these calls for any amount of time due to the time decay. All right, any questions about that? Very expensive calls and puts. All right, back to Bookmap. And let's zoom in. Let's see if we can get some more information. Zoom in a little bit more. And again, sorry about the slow response. I have a lot open in Bookmap here. All right, bid-ask spread not too bad now. That's shown by these. This is the MBBO lines right here, bid-ask spread. So it is not too bad. Maybe up to 50 cents wide, bid-ask spread. See, it's very jumpy. So if you do trade shares, I would stay small and use a pretty wide stop. So there's some limit buy orders right around 256. Looks like those have been consumed. Let's see what options traders are doing. So let's go back to Hero. All right, see how jumpy it is. Quick jump down to 255 now. And let's go check Hero and then a bigger jump down. Let's see what options traders are doing. Then we'll get to the indexes. Pretty difficult to trade. I'm going to go back to total, go to circle. So the Hero signal is moving lower, so I would definitely be looking for shorts. All right, so Hero signal moving lower, and also cumulative volume delta moving lower as well. Let's turn on one other thing. Then I'm going to turn this on, wait for it, and then I'm going to turn on market pulse price change. Then we'll go to the indexes. There's circle. And I'm going to turn that on. Let's go check the S&P 500. All right, looks like the S&P 500 finding resistance right around SPY 599. Large traders started fading that move with iceberg orders. Let's see what options traders are doing in the S&P 500. Let's go back to the index signal first. So the index signal continues to climb. And SPX is above 6,000 and above the Spotgamma implied one-day move high. Let's check the equity signal. Continues to move higher. Traders continue to buy calls and sell puts. In both the index and in the equities, Hero signals. Back to Bookmap. Zoom in a bit. All right, so it looks like there are some sellers, limit sell orders at 60.70. NES found some resistance at that level earlier. Now making slightly lower highs. Let's darken up the heat map just a little bit. Let's check NASDAQ. All right, does anyone have any questions, any stocks they want me to take a look at? All right, NASDAQ still. All right, NASDAQ back. Finding resistance at QQQ 532. Let's go back to Hero. Check NASDAQ. All right, the call buyers have taken the foot off the gas. Check Mag 7. Call buyers have also taken their foot off the gas. All right, does anyone have any stocks they want me to take a look at? I'm going to go back to the total signal. Let's go back to circle. Hero signal continues to move lower. Let me get that out of the way. Back to Bookmap. The indicator that I just added to circle is this market pulse price change. And in a downtrend, I would be looking for these extremes. It's like an oscillator, looking at these extremes for short entries. So another potential short would be right around 260 maybe. 260, 261 acted as resistance earlier. Let's go back and check Hero. Now when I'm trading, I'm looking at 3 screens. I'm looking at Hero on one screen, Bookmap in my middle screen, and then a trading platform on my right screen. And let's go back to Hero. So of course, when I'm presenting, I can only show one screen at a time. Zoom in just a bit. All right, so in this zoomed in level, it looks like the Hero signal has flattened out just a little bit. All right, so it looks like 260 was a good short. Limit sell orders in the order book. They were consumed. And circle traded down to the just above the 257 level. And that was at the market pulse price change extreme level, the bright green, that I would be looking at for a short. So a little scalp in circle there. Short at 260. And price target, main price target would be 255. So combining order flow and hedging flow here. Set up a nice short in circle. Actually, right now, TradeStation is showing circle is hard to borrow. So you'd actually have to use a short locate tool to and TradeStation to find stocks to sell. All right, let's check the indexes. And ES pretty much flat at the SPY 599 level. Check NASDAQ. Trading in a range between QQQ 531 and 532. Hector says CVD very high to ES. Yeah, I don't keep track of that number from day to day. It is positive, whereas icebergs and stops are both negative for the day. All right, let's go back. Let's take a look at Hero. Let's zoom in on this. All right, again, for Circle, you would have to either locate shares to sell short in TradeStation, or have another broker that either doesn't have that restriction or has a short locate as well. Let me check something else. All right, Circle is hard to borrow in Thinkorswim as well. Now with Thinkorswim, you don't have to use any special application to get shares to short, but they will charge you interest. I think if held overnight, or maybe even for the day. I don't know. I had no trouble shorting it on Friday in TradeStation. All right, let's go to Hero. All right, circle back up almost to 260 or 260. Yeah, let's check S&P 500. Now it looks like the Hero signal is starting to tick lower. Check the equity signal, and it's ticking higher. ES flat. Let's check trace. All right, now the gamma heat map has turned negative for the where SPX has moved. Earlier today, it was positive, and now in the center of this positive pocket of positive gamma, right around 60.20, and SPX stuck right at that level. Let's check charm. Looking for potential pins. What I'm looking for is something like this right here. Pocket of positive support below, blue support. Red selling pressure. This is due to charm, the change in price as time decays. So this is selling pressure above and buying support below, and SPX is right in this vortex in between the two. Let's zoom in a little bit. Again, red selling pressure above. This is charm pressure. Red selling pressure above, blue buying support below. And potential pin target right here. At the end of the day, that's right at 6,000. Maybe 59.95. But right now, SPX stuck in this vortex. Again, red selling pressure. This is charm pressure above, and blue buying support below. Let's check delta pressure. And not as clear. Kind of a neutral zone. Let's go back to gamma, the gamma heat map. And SPX continues to be stuck in this pocket of positive gamma. Any questions about this? All right, back to Hero. Equity signal moving higher slightly. Index signal starting to move lower. Looks like ES may be responding. Let's go back. Yeah, it is. you can see more aggressive sellers starting to come in. Yes, making lower highs, more magenta volume dots. Hero signal turning lower. Let's check NASDAQ. Now back down to the 531 level. $532 resistance, 531 support. Let's see if it breaks down through that level. Let's go check Hero. All right, so it looks like Circle has hit the 255 target. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. We'll take a look at Hero for NASDAQ, then go to Circle. Go to Circle. All right, Hero signal continues to move lower. Back to Bookmap, back to Circle. All right, so here's I think this was the initial entry short at 260. And then Circle moved back up to that level and then traded down. So a little bit of a double top there at 260. Here's the initial entry again with the market pulse price change, showing the green extreme. Note the nice divergence and market pulse price change. Equal high in price, lower high and market pulse price change, setting up a nice short, and again reaching this time reaching the target at 255. Looks like next target below. Let me move this just a little bit. So we can see what's down below. So next primary target is 250, the limit buy orders in the order book there. So this may be a pullback. So we have a double top at 260, market pulse price change divergence, high liquidity target, primary target, or initial target at 255. And let's watch, see what happens. Go back and check Hero, and I am over my time. I was just so focused on this, so I need to wrap it up. Everyone, I want to thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your questions and comments. Have a great afternoon, and I will see you on Wednesday. Remember, again, Jerome Powell, testimony before Congress, Tuesday and Wednesday, 10 a.m., and then we'll talk about it on Wednesday. All right, everyone, thanks again, and I will see you on Wednesday. Bye.